The healthcare bill in hiding. Uncivil war at Evergreen College.
He can go and be racist and be a piece of shit wherever he wants to do that.
And war over self-driving cars. An explosion at a kindergarten in eastern China killed at least 7 people and injured 59. 2 died immediately at the site, and 5 others at the hospital. Parents were picking their kids up when the blast occurred. The cause of the explosion was not immediately known. Thousands of people are marching more than 250 miles from Ankara to Istanbul to protest the imprisonment of a lawmaker from Turkey's main opposition party. A court sentenced Enes Berberoğlu to 25 years in prison on spying charges. Protesters called the sentence lawless and politically motivated.
We are protesting against all the human rights violations in this country.
More than 50,000 people have been imprisoned since last year's failed coup, but Berberoğlu is the first lawmaker from the main opposition party. The University of Virginia student who was released from a North Korean prison this week has suffered, quote, a severe neurological injury. Pyongyang claimed that Otto Warmbier, who has apparently been in a coma for months, had been infected with botulism. But doctors said his brain showed no evidence of the disease. Warmbier's father also spoke today.
I'm so proud of Otto, my son, who has been in a pariah regime for the last 18 months, brutalized and terrorized.
Congress went forward with its annual Republicans versus Democrats baseball game, despite Wednesday's shooting that left 5 people injured. Majority Whip Steve Scalise and a lobbyist for Tyson Foods are still in critical condition. After the shooting, ticket sales skyrocketed, and organizers have raised more than $1 million for charity. During an annual, carefully orchestrated appearance where Russian President Vladimir Putin takes questions from the public, he called former FBI Director James Comey's decision to leak personal conversations with the president bizarre, and compared Comey to Edward Snowden.
Кстати говоря, если в этой связи против него будут обращены какие-то там преследования, возникнут и так далее, мы и ему готовы будем предоставить политическое убежище в России. Он должен об этом знать.
Last month, Evergreen State College in Washington went crazy when a professor of evolutionary biology named Brett Weinstein objected to a day of absence when white students and faculty were asked to voluntarily leave campus. Weinstein branded it a form of racial segregation. A group of student protesters called him a racist. The confrontation incited further protests, debates over free speech, and claims of systemic racism on campus. And things haven't calmed down. Tomorrow, Evergreen will hold its graduation at an off-campus location, 40 miles away.
Would you like to hear the answer or not?
No!
Okay.
This is the video viewed by millions that put Evergreen State and Weinstein in the national spotlight.
This is not a discussion. You have lost that one.
This is not a discussion. You've lost that one.
Yeah, you've lost that one.
So what are they doing here if they don't want to talk to you?
Well, this is part and parcel of their central mode. They're just simply shutting down somebody that they don't want to hear from.
I am not interested in debate. I am interested only in dialectic, which does mean I listen to you and you listen to me.
Weinstein has taught at Evergreen State for 14 years. He describes himself as deeply progressive, but has been denounced as a racist tool of the alt-right by some students and faculty. Weinstein objected to the day of absence in a formal protest email to colleagues, arguing that, quote, one's right to speak or to be must never be based on skin color. Calls for his resignation followed.
By virtue of the way they constructed this, you were making a statement by being on campus that you were not an ally. And I feel like I am an ally to people of color in their attempt to gain equity.
Do you have any sense at this point of why they want you to resign?
Well, they think that I'm a racist. Because if you stand up against one of these things because you think it's ill-considered, that you will be branded as a racist.
We are here to support. We want to dismantle anti-blackness campus-wide.
We just wanted to be like, until you're accountable for these actions, you don't get to teach students at Evergreen. You don't get to spread this problematic rhetoric and instill it in students.
Yes, you're disrupting my class.
So at this point, we would like Brett to be fired. But that isn't happening. The administration is refusing to take action. They're choosing to protect this white, cis male professor over its students.
Later that day, the students held a raucous meeting at which they presented a list of demands, including the disarming of campus police and mandatory sensitivity training for all faculty.
Okay, we trying to listen. Go ahead.
It's the one point on which the protesters and Weinstein agree. Evergreen's embattled president, George Bridges, has mishandled the crisis.
I think their concerns are legitimate. They're articulating ideas that have to do with race, ethnicity, power, privilege, and we're taking a look at them.
That's my problem, George. You keep doing these little hand movements or whatever.
Come through.
People were criticizing you for using hand gestures.
Absolutely, they were. And you know,
that seems crazy to people from the outside of Evergreen.
It may, but it's noise.
But the noise has been effective.
No, fuck you, George. We don't want to hear a goddamn thing you have to say.
So you don't need to watch that door, watch all the doors, watch the windows. You need to keep eyes on them. And somebody needs to go in that room real quick to make sure that there's no way to get that room for them.
I mean, essentially sounded like you're being held hostage there. If you were going to go to the bathroom, you had to go with 2 escorts? Is that true?
That's what the students felt was true. I was going to go to the
bathroom.
bathroom.
What do you mean that's what the students
Well, that's what they said. If you want to go to the bathroom, I was going to go to the bathroom regardless, and they wanted to escort me. I felt very safe there. Why what?
Why did they want to escort you to the bathroom?
I don't know.
Did you ask them?
No, of course not.
Professor Brett Weinstein joins us.
The situation on campus grew even more inflamed after Weinstein went on Fox News. The protesters say his appearance provoked threats from the alt-right.
Although Brett has not personally said, go out and attack these students, go out and threaten these students, that has been the result of his actions. He has incited white supremacists and he has validated white supremacists and Nazis in our community and in the nation. And I don't think that should be protected by free speech.
We received a threat saying that people will come here and execute every single person they see on campus. At that point, fuck free speech.
When we're dead, when people die, and you're sitting here like, well, at least they got to practice their free speech. I'm so sorry about it. Your free speech is not more important than the lives of like Black, trans, femmes, and students on this campus. I'm so sorry. I hate to break it to you.
Love you.
The protests have been effective, but it's unclear if they're widely supported. Many students told us that they've been hesitant to publicly dissent. Kirsten, who also didn't want us to use her last name, is one of Weinstein's students.
I'm afraid of having a nuanced opinion because I'm afraid that my opinions and I will be stigmatized.
It's a rather strange sentence to hear on a university campus. I'm fearful of my nuanced opinion.
So I feel that I do not have the ability to speak if I have disagreements with the methods that are being used in the protests.
There is this issue of what I can say and what I can't say and who's going to dismiss me or demean me for saying it. And that is new in the American discourse.
A student told me that you're a white supremacist.
I'm assuming that students have said lots of things about me. I don't believe I am. I'm
you
a
don't
white
believe
person.
you are, but you accept that you might be.
No. Well, it depends on what you mean by a white supremacist. What does that mean? I'm a white person in a position of privilege.
Okay. I guess that's part of the confusion for me is the precision of language seems to be lost in a lot of this conversation.
It is.
Bridges has acceded to many of the students' demands, but there's a demand he hasn't given into, that Weinstein be fired. Weinstein won't rule out the possibility that he's taught his last class at Evergreen. But if he comes back to teach next semester, he can expect the protest to continue.
I don't care what happens to Brett anymore. He can go and be racist and be a piece of shit wherever he wants to do that. Hopefully, long term, we can just weed out people like Brett.
At this point, why not just beat a hasty retreat and say, there's no point in doing this?
Frankly, every student in that hallway who had chosen to make that protest has a clue about where they're going wrong. But I think that my standing there did some good.
British Prime Minister Theresa May visited the scene of Wednesday's devastating fire at a West London tower block today. She's ordered a full public inquiry into the blaze that killed at least 17 people, a number that is expected to rise significantly. But the tragedy has already forced Britons to confront some deeply uncomfortable questions about growing inequality in the UK. Mylène Larson reports.
My phone called and it was my mom and she was just screaming, there's a fire in the building. So I ran as fast as I could.
Please move back, everybody!
This is the flat that I live in and it's completely on fire.
Sajjad and his family lived on the third floor of the tower. By the time he arrived on the scene, his mother had managed to escape the burning building. Others were not so lucky.
There was one guy, he was on his balconies on his phone talking, and then going around and around and around, and just above him, there's one guy, he just jumped. We all saw him falling down, and it was just that moment we all panicked, we were so scared.
The whole building is just gone. The whole building.
The fire at Grenfell Tower comes less than a week after the Prime Minister's dismal performance in the general election, which saw the opposition Labour Party make gains on a platform of anti-austerity and a pledge to reverse inequality. Critics of the government believe what happened in Kensington this week to be a symptom of that neglect.
If you cut local authority expenditure, then a price is paid somewhere.
Grenfell Tower is located in the borough of Kensington and Chelsea, an area with the highest gross household income in the UK. But almost 90% of the tower was public housing, and most of the victims of the fire are low-income tenants. Grenfell Tower recently underwent an $11 million renovation. Improvements included cladding to improve energy efficiency. What the money didn't buy was a building-wide fire alarm or a sprinkler system. We approached the building management for a comment. They are yet to reply. Residents worried about the tower's safety. And the BBC reports that the cladding on the building had a plastic core instead of a mineral one, which some experts say is more flammable.
Despite basic health and safety concerns, this building was cladded on the outside, and many people here are saying that was so it looked attractive to the wealthy people in the surrounding areas. So it looked nice, rather than meeting the urgent needs of the residents who lived in the building.
Why do you think this tower block fire is going to galvanise people?
I think because it epitomises the inequality, the injustice that people across London are facing with housing. People are prioritising and valuing profits over people's lives.
Sajjad and his family spent last night in a hotel, not far from his former home.
What happens for you now?
It's your memory there, everything that you carried from very childhood, and it's a property that you love. It's all burned, it's all gone, but I at this point, I don't really care about that, witnessing people dying in front of me, not only one or two, but many. It's just, I can't get over that.
Since demonstrations began in Bahrain after the Arab Spring, more than 3,000 people have been imprisoned for dissent by the Sunni-led government. At least 100 have been killed. A year ago, a human rights activist named Nabil Rajab was thrown in prison. He faces 18 years. His crime? Questioning the Bahrain government on Twitter. Ben Anderson first met Rajab back in 2014 while reporting on anti-government protests. Today, Rajab is seriously ill, but still under lock and key in a military hospital.
The uprising in Bahrain used to be inconvenient for the US because it has its biggest regional naval base there. Bahrain is also a large consumer of US arms and has spent approximately $1.5 billion on American weapons and equipment since 2000. But those sales had been frozen following the killing and jailing of protesters. That all changed on May 21st when President Trump met and praised King Hamad bin Isa Khalifa, promising a long-term relationship free of the strain caused by the Obama administration. The following day, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson announced a decision to lift the Obama-era human rights conditions. And and allow the sale of $2.8 billion worth of American fighter jets. The day after that, authorities in Bahrain launched one of their deadliest crackdowns to date, killing 5 demonstrators and jailing almost 300. One of the conditions Tillerson lifted was the release of Nabil Rajab, who I interviewed back in 2014.
I was in jail because of Twitter. And there are hundreds of people in jail today because of Twitter.
And because you said what on Twitter?
Once I criticized the Prime Minister, I was sentenced for 3 months. And then I called people to take part in a peaceful protest. I was sentenced for 2 years.
But the first time they let you go after a few hours, the second time they let you go after...
First, I don't know why. They just took me to beat me and torture me and release me. But then again, about the Twitter. And I said something about the Minister of Interior. They keep me in isolation for 2 years in a building that was made for me.
Rajab was arrested again in 2016 for another series of tweets. And his hearing has been postponed 25 times. He has now been indefinitely held, mostly in solitary confinement in a police station, where his health is declining. Vice News obtained an audio recording from Rajab over the weekend.
صدق صحيا تعبان ومتضايق في حجز انفرادي على مدى سنة واحدة كاملة ولكن تأكد أن معنوياتي جدا عالية لأن إيماني بقضيتي وإيماني بالنضال اللي احنا نسعى من أجله والهدف.
Rajab's family and defense team fear that sentencing is imminent. The dictatorship in Bahrain may have been hesitant before, but they now have a green light to go ahead and attempt to crush the opposition movement for good.
When the House passed its Obamacare replacement bill in May, the president all but busted out the champagne.
That's the group. Thank you.
But the real work was just beginning.
Trump care, no!
The House bill is so unpopular that it's becoming a liability, which means it's up to the Senate to write a new bill that can pass both chambers and hand the president his first real achievement. That kind of political pressure has a noticeable effect on Capitol Hill. The traditional legislative process goes out the window. Shauna Thomas explains.
You've seen the headlines. The Senate's health care bill remains shrouded in secrecy, and the complaints from the left that they're totally excluded from the process.
Will we have a hearing on the health care proposal?
Will we?
Yes.
I think we've already had one, but...
No, I mean on the proposal that you're planning to bring to the floor of the Senate for a vote. Will there be a hearing?
Well, I don't know that there's going to be another hearing, but we've invited you to participate and give your ideas.
No, that's not true, Mr. Chairman. We have no idea what's being proposed. There's a group of guys in a back room somewhere.
But here's the reality. Partisan bills get done in partisan ways. This is going to be a partisan affair till the very end.
Everybody's participating who wants to, and the idea is to get enough votes to pass it. Unfortunately, it will have to be Republicans only exercise.
This should sound familiar. Republicans made the same complaints back in 2009 and 2010 when the Democrats were in charge, and they were trying to get Obamacare passed in the first place. Here's how Obamacare played out back then. In July of 2009, then Speaker Nancy Pelosi released a plan for overhauling healthcare. Then the committees took that and started tinkering with it, and there were hearings. There were a lot of hearings. What came out of all those hearings was legislative text that was formally introduced in the House in October of 2009. That bill was debated, that bill was voted on, that bill in the form it was passed in the House never became law. So what became law? The Senate kind of ended up doing their own thing. They had hearings too, but what ended up becoming Obamacare didn't go to the Senate floor until November of 2009. That bill was passed less than a month later on Christmas Eve. And this is where what happened with Obamacare will be instructive about what's happening now in the Senate. So going back to 2010, because of changing political dynamics, the House was forced to pass exactly the same thing the Senate did. No conferences, no amendments. That was the only way for the Democrats to get the Affordable Care Act done. And that's exactly the same thing that Mitch McConnell will force the House of Representatives to do if he can get his conservative ducks in a row to introduce a bill that makes enough Republicans happy to get it through the Senate.
You know it's been a bad week for your company when a board member steps down and your CEO takes a leave over sexist corporate culture, and it's not even your biggest problem. Uber is locked in a legal battle with Google over stolen trade secrets and the cutthroat race for the self-driving car that both companies have set their sights on. It's a corporate war that could decide the future of the auto industry. And in the middle of it is just one man. Back in 2004, a Berkeley graduate student named Anthony Lewandowski built a self-driving motorcycle, which he called Ghost Rider. He entered it in the DARPA Grand Challenge, a contest testing the limits of autonomous vehicles. Ghost Rider crashed and couldn't finish the race, but it was a start. After graduating, Lewandowski co-founded a small company called 510 Systems, where he built a program that marries images from multiple cameras with GPS data. He moved to Google in 2007, but continued to work at 510 on the side, until 2011, when he convinced Google to buy 510, which then became the foundation of Google's self-driving car division, Waymo. The innovation at the heart of autonomous cars is a radar-like system called LiDAR, which lets them see and navigate. Lewandowski spent years at Google working on LiDAR, but in January of 2016, he suddenly quit, along with a handful of colleagues, to open a company of their own, a self-driving truck startup called Otto. In August of that year, Uber bought Otto and Lewandowski for $680 million. But in December, a Google employee was accidentally copied on an email from an outside supplier, showing a LiDAR circuit board that Google says looked suspiciously like the board Lewandowski had developed for them, and which, under intellectual property law, they would own. 2 months later, Google filed a public records request in Nevada, where Uber was testing its vehicles, which deepened its hunch that Lewandowski had taken secrets with him when he left the company. A few days later, Google filed suit. Google alleges that shortly before quitting, Lewandowski and 2 others downloaded 14,000 documents from the company's servers, and that they then used what amounts to stolen property to develop self-driving technology for Google's arch-rival. In federal court on March 30th, Lewandowski was called to testify in Google's civil suit against Uber. He refused, invoking his Fifth Amendment rights. He also refused to turn over any documents, even though Uber urged him to. 2 weeks ago, Uber fired Lewandowski, but that won't stop them from having to face Google in court, potentially curbing Uber's self-driving dreams. For his part, Lewandowski may possibly return to court too, to face criminal charges.
It's fire. Oh shit. That was sick. Oh, this is old, right? I get this like post Rick James era. This is early Bruno Mars for sure.
Bad Rabbits, just released.
Holy shit. It sounds so old. The music sounds old, and the synth sounds old, like the synth sound itself. But that's coming back, right? That whole sound's coming back. Pitchfork. This would be like a 8 out of 10 on Pitchfork for sure. This guy sounds really wise, like old and wise. Big beard, big kind of scruffy beard, cowboy hat. It's cool though. It's got lots of vibes. This might give John Mayer a run for his money on this one. Guitar playing is sick and the vocals are dope. The way it's sung. It's definitely a white guy.
Harry Styles.
That's Harry Styles? Wow. This is awesome. How did I not hear this yet? I'm a fan. Big fan. Another generation screaming out. Oh shit. This changes up right there. This is the mosh pit part. Everyone's just throwing windmills. I'm happy that some of that music is coming back though. You know, from that era. This sounds like Weezer Pinkerton. the guitars. I can imagine this girl, big guitar, she's got bangs, she's got attitude. She just said fuck off. She's from Portland.
That's Vice News Tonight for Thursday, June 15th. Tune in tomorrow night for the award-winning documentary series, Vice.
What do you think America's role is in fighting climate change compared to Russia?
Ну, вообще, я считаю, что Америка, вообще говоря, лидером.
There are regions in the world where there are no potential benefits, but Russia is not such a region. Russia is lucky.
Does it make you nervous that the Earth is warming at such an exponential rate?
Да, для нас на самом деле это очень приятно, когда теплое лето, когда...
Будут пальмы только расти, и все.